Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're setting our sights on the Roman Empire, specifically the city builder Anno 117.
Which launched, what, November 13th, 2025? And by all accounts, I mean the core gameplay, the city building mechanics, a huge success.
A massive success.
Right.
But if you spent even 5 minutes on the community boards, you hit this wall of pure frustration.
And it was all about one thing.
The campaign story.
Yeah, the story. It starts out incredibly strong. You have this high-stakes drama, political intrigue, and then it just, poof, it flatlines, vanishes.
So we've been digging through everything, all the community analysis, the forum breakdowns, and critically, the data mining reports to try and piece together this ghost narrative.
Right. What was the story they were trying to tell?
That's our mission today. We're going to figure out what happened to the mysterious missing Act 3 and what this huge narrative hole tells us about, I guess, the pressures of modern game development.
And it all kicks off with a choice, which is kind of new for Anno. You pick your protagonist, Marcus or Marcia.
Right, and the game explicitly tells you this choice will set up a very different tone.
No, and it is. It's a very different tone.
But both paths, they slam into the exact same brick wall. So, okay, let's unpack this. How can a campaign be so compelling at the start, but end so disappointingly that people thought their games were broken?
I mean, the community consensus is just, it's not even a debate. Marcia's storyline is the masterpiece.
Yeah.
One person online described it as a slow-moving train wreck, and they absolutely meant that as a compliment.
Which is high praise for a city builder plot, you know?
Exactly. Marcus's path is fine. It's your standard Roman drama. He's dealing with neglect from the capital, a bit of imposter syndrome.
Right, trying to prove he belongs there. It's lighter. It has some genuinely funny moments, like trying to calm down the emperor with a bowl of porridge.
It works, but Marcia's story, that's a whole other level. It's this deep dive into conspiracy and corruption. So she has the neglect, but also she's a literal imposter.
An actual imposter. She arrives in the province claiming to be the wife of Governor Lucius, but he's nowhere to be seen.
Right, and they feed her these stories, you know, oh, he's sick, he has swamp fever, it's the pox. But the emperor is so cagey about it, you know, right away something is very, very wrong.
It's a cover-up. And the beauty of it is how fast she gets tangled in that web. She's forced to lie, and then lie about the lie until she finds out the truth.
And the truth is just, wow.
Her husband, Lucius, is secretly buried in the Empress's personal garden. That's a phenomenal plot twist.
It's incredible. And that discovery, it forces her and her assistant, Ben, into this incredibly dangerous game of pretending Lucius is still alive.
Because if she gets caught, I mean, that's it. Execution. And Ben is completely ruined. The stakes just go from 0 to 100.
And you get these amazing, tense scenes because of that pressure. Like the bit in Albion where Ben almost blows their cover during this big presentation with an elephant of all things.
Yeah, I remember that. And then the real crisis hits. The emperor decides to visit. The emperor who knew the real Lucius.
And you can't talk your way out of that one. There's no excuse that's going to work.
So their solution is just pure, brilliant desperation.
Stagecraft. They use face paint, what the game calls Oscar-worthy makeup, to make the fake Lucius, who is played by Ben, look so horrifically sick.
So contagious.
So contagious that nobody, especially not the Emperor, is going to get close enough to see it's not him.
And that's why her story works so well, I think. That constant dread, plus the political connections she makes, you know, with Julia and the imperial family.
Yeah.
She has a real personal stake in what happens when the new emperor, Calidus, shows up.
It's a perfect Roman thriller, which is exactly why the ending is so jarring.
Utterly jarring.
The writers clearly put so much work into these two very different, very emotional opening acts, only for both of them to just stop, dead, at the exact same point.
So after all that incredible buildup, all the tension, right when you think you're heading into the grand finale, the story just ends.
It stops. The collective reaction from the community was just shock. People genuinely thought they'd hit a game-breaking bug.
We saw so many comments where people said it felt like a CEO just walked into the writer's room and yelled, "Pencils down, we're out of time."
Which then leads to the official denial.
Right.
When players started asking Ubisoft support about it, the official line was that this is the intended ending.
That it's supposed to be a smooth transition into the endless mode.
And that there is, and I'm quoting here, no other scripted content related to the main quests.
A statement which just, it does not add up.
Yeah.
Not with the story they were building, especially Marcia's.
No. And this is where the data miners come in. The sources we looked at, the people who dug into the game files, they found really compelling evidence for the other theory.
Which is?
That a full, complete Act 3 was developed, or at the very least it was fully outlined and scripted, and then it was just cut from the final game.
And you don't even need to be a data miner to see that. You just have to look at all the loose threads, the unresolved plot points.
So many of them. And these aren't small subplots. These are the main high-stakes political threads that Act 3 was clearly built to resolve.
Okay, let's start with the biggest one. The death of the old Emperor Lucius.
Yes. The script all but screams that he was assassinated. The new Emperor Calidus himself says he's suspicious that the death might not have been natural. That's a huge setup for a reveal that never comes.
Never comes. And then you have the massive criminal conspiracy they were building in the background.
A terrifying one. Pirates, slavery, Roman citizen trafficking. And this wasn't just some side quest. It was tied directly to the old Governor Lucius, who was a total scumbag, and maybe even to your own father.
Right. They established that Lucius picked you, the player, specifically because he thought you'd be easy to control and would let him continue this corrupt operation.
That's a massive theme, uncovering the rot at the heart of the empire. And by cutting Act 3, you're basically cutting the entire point of that struggle.
You're cutting the resolution. And the implied next step was, what? A civil war.
Pretty much. The structure was clearly pushing you towards a choice. Do you side with the new Emperor Calidus, who seems okay but is all about conquest?
Or do you side with Julia, the relative, with a legitimate claim to the throne, who represents a different way forward? Act 3 was supposed to be that choice, probably ending with you having to physically fight Calidus's forces.
And we haven't even mentioned the biggest hook for the future.
The father.
The main character's father, who is just, quote, chilling in Egypt. It's such an obvious setup for DLC. But the main story just ignores him, ignores his connection to all this corruption. It leaves this giant structural hole where the climax should be.
So this is where we have to shift our perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Stop looking at it just as a story and start looking at its function.
Exactly. Why cut what seems like a finished story? This whole situation forces you to remember the primary role of the campaign in an Anno game.
It's a tutorial.
It's a structured tutorial. That's the core conflict here. For a lot of series veterans, the campaign isn't about the story, really. It's about a guided path that introduces you, step by step, to the citizen tiers and the production chains.
From plebes to equites, then senators. Each one getting way more complex.
Exponentially more complex. You go from needing basic tools to luxury goods, advanced buildings, global trade.
And this is where the comparison to Anno 1800 becomes so important.
Yeah. The campaign in 1800 got a lot of criticism for failing as a tutorial.
A big criticism.
Yeah.
It basically ended before you got to any of the really complex stuff. It never taught you about electricity or railways or the late-game citizen tiers.
So you got thrown into the endless sandbox mode, completely unprepared for how deep the economy actually gets.
The developers knew this. They were reportedly very aware of that failure. And the first two acts of Anno 117 seemed like the perfect fix. It felt like a return to the classic campaigns, like Anno 1404.
It was setting up this brilliant game-long tutorial, but by cutting Act 3, they rushed the whole thing. They end up repeating the exact same mistake they were trying to fix.
Because Act 3 was the part that was supposed to teach you the endgame. It was going to introduce the highest Roman citizen tier, which meant global trade routes, complex logistics, naval combat.
All the skills you need for the sandbox. Instead, nope. You're just dumped straight in without that guidance, and you can see the functional cracks right away.
Oh, yeah. Like with Ben Ballion. You make this huge choice in Marcia's story to free him from slavery. It's a massive character moment.
It is, but because they're missing unique voice lines for him as a free man later in the endless game, he still refers to himself as a slave.
Which just completely guts the emotional weight of your decision.
It completely nullifies it. And on the gameplay side, the transition is just, it's punishing. When the campaign ends, it suddenly drops 2 aggressive AI opponents into your main region.
Right. So if you were hoping for a chill, peaceful start to your sandbox game, too bad. You're immediately dealing with a military threat that can wreck your early economy.
Here's where it gets really interesting for me. The pressure to hit that launch date, it seems like it broke the very system that was meant to teach people how to play the game.
They saw the problems of the last game. They designed a brilliant solution.
Yeah.
And then they just couldn't stick the landing because of, external pressures.
The irony is just, it's profound. They had a roadmap for a great story and a roadmap for a great tutorial, and they couldn't manage their own plan to the finish line.
So what we've learned is that Anno 117 gave us this incredible narrative hook. It was politically complex, it was tense, it was thematically rich, especially Marcia's story.
But it seems like time or budget constraints just took a pair of scissors to the final act, leaving all this amazing potential assassinations, slavery rings, civil war, just sitting unused in the game
We
files.
saw two beautifully crafted campaign paths that, for all their differences, just slammed into the same anticlimactic wall.
The setup was brilliant, but the execution, or the lack of it, just overshadowed everything.
So we want to leave you with a final thought on this.
Mhm.
If the core plot of Anno 117 was all about governance, political maneuvering, and uncovering this deep imperial conspiracy, how much of the game's actual theme did they sacrifice by cutting that final act?
Right. Did they abandon the moral and political weight they'd spent hours building just to hit a deadline and push players into the basic city building loop?
It's a really good question.
I mean, if we want to get really meta, the ultimate irony is that for a game entirely about building and managing an empire, the developers couldn't manage their own resources well enough to finish the story of governance they started. What does it even mean when the story meant to teach you the empire is itself unfinished?
A compelling question about art versus deadlines. We'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.